faith in God is not a stagnant state, it's a journey. As a believer, we should grow in our knowledge of God and His Word. Walk with Alan Cutting and many other believers as together we walk the believer's journey.
Thank you for joining us today on the believer's journey. It's so nice to have you here. And I just want to tell you that it's been a wonderful year, even though we've had awful and terrible coronavirus problems. But you know, God is good. Christmas, even though we had a small gathering in my home, you know, it's good. And I'm so glad you're joining us today. And today we're going to talk about using our talents to benefit others. And with us today is my guest, Sonny Melendrez.
Nice to be here, Alan. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and you know, I am so honored to have you on the show. I mean, the funny thing is that, you know, when for those of you that don't know, what we do is when I have a guest, I always ask them what their passion is biblically, and we'll use that as our topic, and we'll do that biblical teaching on there. So this is Sonny's biblical topic, and it's just kind of neat. What I have to let everybody know here, those of you who are in Europe and so forth, you may not have heard of Sonny, but I have heard of him when I was a kid. Even my mother, she's staying with us right now, and I had asked her if she ever heard of Sonny Melendrez. She goes, boy, that name is really familiar. How about KRLA or KMPC?
Oh, so you lived in Los Angeles.
Growing up as a kid.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And my mom is born and raised there and lived there except for when she was...
Oh, my goodness. Wow, Alan, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
KMPC, Los Angeles.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. You know, KMPC was billed as the station of the stars. In fact, if you could believe this, every single personality on KMPC was connected with or even hosting a national television show.
Wow.
And that included Gary Owens, who was on Laugh-In. He always had his hand over his ear saying these silly things with his incredible voice. Wing Martindale, who I talked to just recently. Jeff Edwards, Clark Race, Roger Carroll. And I was the new kid on the block. I was in my 20s. But a lesson learned, and that was that I had earned my right to be there. So even though I was, wet behind the ears, I still was there for a reason, and it was an incredible, experience to be with all of this incredible talent, and that's what they let us do. They let us literally be ourselves. If you can believe this, every single personality programmed their own show. They picked the music. So it was like a different format for every personality. And it was a most amazing experience that will probably never, ever happen again on terrestrial radio.
Wow. So, well, when I was a kid growing up, KRLA was the big thing. Now, as a kid, it was like 93 KHJ. It was AM. And then FM came in, and then we started listening to more rock and roll as a teenager and so forth. So I remember this stuff, And
That's great.
It was surprising. My mom's 84, and she's so funny. She says, I think I'll watch you today.
What's your mom's name?
Muriel Usselman.
Muriel Usselman. Yes. Wow, what a great name. Muriel. It is an honor to be broadcasting with you in our audience. So, Mazel tov. I don't know why I said that, but congratulations on having a fine son.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, so let me, when you sent over your bio and we have to go through it, it's so funny. I think I was reading a book. And I have some people with a lot of information, and we go through it, but nothing like yours. And I think what it is that when I read this, and I read that you were a program director in El Paso at 19 years old.
Yeah.
And so you were the youngest program director in the country?
Yes, I was. The Department of Labor sent me a letter saying that for the market that size. And again, it all happened so quickly. I grew up here in San Antonio, went to San Antonio College, and that's where I started my radio career at the college radio station. And I had an incredible teacher. Her name was Jean Longwith. In fact, she's a legend. She literally was there for decades, and they named a building after her. As a matter of fact, that's where the radio, TV, film department is now. But from there, I went to, because San Antonio College, of course, is a 2-year college. Then I went to what was then Texas Western in El Paso, and it was turned to UTEP. But a friend of mine at the radio station said they need a weekend DJ at the #1 station. Yeah, you'd be perfect. And I said, no, I'm not ready yet. He said, no, you're ready. And he hands me the phone. He calls the program director, and I instantly went into my radio voice, hello, and I got the job. And Alan, I was turning on the radio station, was off on Sunday mornings from midnight to 5 a.m. for maintenance, and I would go in and I would flip up the switch, go on the air, and I was on from 5 a.m. to noon for 7 hours, and then from noon to 4, I was the newsman for the next guy, and I was making a whopping $1.25 an hour.
Wow.
Alan, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I couldn't believe that they were paying me to have this much fun. And that's the way I've always felt about radio.
Well, and before I get into this introduction, I have a question for you, because, in noticing that you even have a community center named after you on the west side of San Antonio, how were your beginnings? How did you start out as a child?
Well, I was born. Actually, I grew up inside my dad's barbershop. My dad had a barbershop at the corner of Nolan and Pine here in San Antonio, in a little strip center on the east side of San Antonio. In fact, the building still stands, and it wasn't even a full address. Half of the address was a print shop, and the other half was my dad's barbershop, and he partitioned half of the barbershop for us to live, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And the reason he did that was to save money so that they could my mom and dad could send us to parochial school. We went to Catholic school, St. Michael's School, and then Central Catholic. And it was an incredible gift that they gave us. And then also for college. And in doing so, I was always a dreamer, and I knew I wasn't even a teenager, and I knew what I wanted to do. I had 3 dreams. One was radio, the other was television, and the third was cartoons. I found out at an early age, Alan, that I had an uncanny ability and almost an obligation to mimic voices that I heard. And I would literally watch cartoons and mimic those cartoon voices. So when I found out that radio and TV was also a kind of something that there was a career, I thought, what it would be like to be on the radio on KTSA or KONO. Those were the 2 #1 stations. And I would literally have KTSA playing underneath my pillow at night and listen to it all night, and then, of course, in the morning as well. And I couldn't wait to be on the air, so I had a little tape recorder, a little reel-to-reel tape recorder, and a record player, and I would play these 45 records, and I would talk just like they did on the radio, and I'd create these little 5-minute shows, and then my dad would give me 3 dimes every night, and I would go into the barbershop in the dark and sit on the shoe shine stand next to the payphone on the wall and dial one friend at a time and play my little productions. I was podcasting.
Yeah.
But little did I know that I was giving myself experience. So when I got to college and I got to be able to literally go to the college radio station and do that with real equipment, then it was more of the same thing. And by the time I got the call after I got the first job in El Paso, I got the call like 3 or 4 years later from KTSA to be their program director. And that's what got me started in radio. And it was just an incredible, serendipity. And that's how I believe, we all talk about how we have dreams and what it is we want to do. And I believe that God wants us to be what it is we want to be, because we serve Him when we use our talents. And I also believe that if you do your part, He will do His part. But here's the great thing. Your part is like 10% of everything, of the whole picture. And when you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, that's the hand of God saying you've done the Lord's helps those who help themselves. And it's really true.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know that I really believe this as well. And I think that God has given everybody a gift, but more so, He's given everybody talents. And, I've seen people who squander their talents. I've seen people who just are too afraid to use their talents. And I've seen people like you who have just, put them out there, and it goes crazy. I mean, it just, you infect the world with what you have, which is really amazing. So I want to read a little bit for our audience, about you, because it really is impressive. So
Very kind.
So Sonny Melendrez was, here he says, he was born to inspire. And I guess that it doesn't just include the radio, because, you've done a lot of TV. When you talked about doing cartoons, I grew up with the Jetsons.
Did you?
Yes. And here you're a voice on the Jetsons. I go, wow, this is pretty incredible. So I had to read through all of it. One of these little things catch my eye, like the radio station I grew up with, now the cartoons I grew up with. And so I'm realizing you were part of a lot of my world that I never even knew. And that's incredible.
And it's not a coincidence that we're sitting here today doing what we're doing.
Yes.
I truly believe that there is a purpose and a reason for everything that happens, and it all happens in a very beautiful way if you step back and look at it and truly appreciate it.
Yeah. So let me go on. He says, you motivate others, and always it's an important element in life that you have this dynamic part of you. I guess it's into your radio and your TV, and you also are a motivational speaker. So we had on our show a couple months ago Manny Diot, who's also a motivational.
Oh, I know Manny very well.
Also a motivational speaker, and that was an incredible show. So it's really cool to see this positive life that you represent, and helping others to grab a hold of their talents, grab a hold of their life, to become that which touches other people's lives. I think that's what you do. I was one of the founders of the Christian Business Chamber of Commerce when it was going, and you came and spoke to us one time, and that's basically what I saw, is that you're out there to touch people's lives, to make a difference in their world.
Well, I try, and that's all we all can do is try. And a lot of times people have a fear of what might happen. In fact, it's funny. They do the survey every year, and every year the number one fear that people have is speaking in front of an audience. It's not snakes, it's not flying, it's not heights. It's literally that fear of being there in front of everybody. And I guess I'm lucky because I've been in front of people all my life, even when I was a kid, and that audience that gives back to you. And when you're on the radio, you don't quite have the eye contact that you do when you're a speaker. Mm-hmm. And that's why when I began speaking professionally in the last 10, 15 years, all of a sudden those presentations and that eye contact and that connection, and when you get that feedback, it's so incredible, because it allows you to not only use your talents, but also see that you're literally hitting the mark with hopefully the message that you're giving.
Right. You also, I guess, you're an author. You've written a book called The Art of Living with Enthusiasm.
I gave you a copy, as a matter of fact.
Yes, right here, and here it is. And if anybody wants to order this, they can click on the link in our website and go right to your
exactly
page. It is sonnymelendrez.com. And there you are. So you can go on our website, www.thebelieversjourney.net, go to the guest page, and you can read about Sonny.
And I'll tell you what, anyone watching now, if you order a book today, just mention Alan, and you'll get 2. I'll send you 2 instead of 1. So as many as you want, you'll double your order.
Well, there you go. That's impressive.
That way you can give it to a friend.
So I have here, I read this, and I read it over and over again, and my wife is interesting. She had to help me with this bio here. So we put this on the top, or she did actually. She wanted to put this on the top where I wanted it at the bottom of this. So here I'm going to read this. It is estimated that you have been responsible for raising over $100 million in cash, goods, and services for local and national nonprofits during your career.
Well, I have to tell you that, God puts me in the right place to do things that are, in many ways, incredibly much bigger than we thought. But that's what I love about the connection between the audience. And that audience is one person at a time. I mean, right now, there's somebody watching, somebody listening who might think this is what I need to hear, or might be inspired by what we say. And that's what I love about radio. I remember one time I was on the air in Los Angeles, and it was early morning, and I got a call from a nurse at one of the hospitals saying she had a very sad story to tell me. This is all off the air. She told me about this little girl. She was 11 years old. She had leukemia, and she needed a bone marrow transplant, but her parents didn't have insurance, and they didn't know what to do. So I said, well, what if I asked my listeners, because I knew the nurse, so I knew it was legitimate. So I said, what if I asked my listeners if they would like to donate? Well, Alan, and this is in Los Angeles, on drive time in the morning, within an hour and a half, we raised close to $180,000.
Wow.
People wanting to save this little girl's life. And see, I was just at the right place at the right time. I wasn't responsible for that. I was just, fortunate enough to be able to connect the dots between the audience, and everyone has an incredibly generous heart. They need only to be asked or be given the opportunity. And that's what I've been fortunate enough to do all my life.
And I don't know if you and I talked about this, but a lot of my listeners are from Eastern Europe, and I try to go there at least every year if possible.
Do you?
I do. And this year, obviously, we got canceled this year, and so we were there last year and so forth. And what I do over there is I teach at a Bible seminary, and I also work with a Campus Crusade for Christ with a whole group of missionaries, about 70 on staff there and so forth. Well, before I go over, it's really interesting. I get a list from some of the missionaries, and they'll say, we could use, can you bring? And they'll have a list of vitamins or boots or shirts or jackets or clothing of some type.
Sure.
Or, wires for their to charge their phone, because the wires, it's really funny. He says, oh yeah, we get wires. It's like, they're $13 there. Well, they're $13 here. Yeah, but we get the cheap China stuff, and you don't. So it's obviously different quality. So it usually amounts between $2,000 to $3,000 per trip, and then plus I got to take an extra bag with extra cost to ship it over there.
Sure.
So what I do is I have a classes I teach, and I usually will go to them and I'll say, would anybody like to donate? And I try to raise that $200,000 to be able to purchase all this stuff. And sometimes we make it all the way, and sometimes we don't. So I'm not the great, person who can always do that. But
still, you do what you can. You do what you have with what you have where you are, and that's all that can be asked of you.
Well, and it's watching the blessing on the other end.
Yes.
Which the people here, unfortunately, don't really get to see.
Yes.
So when I go over there, some of the things that it's interesting. So I stay with a missionary family in particular. Their names are Radu and Luda Kukos. And we've stayed with them now for the last 10, 11 years, and it's just really nice. They've got 4 kids, and they used to be little, now they're bigger. And so what's impressive is knowing that they're cheap. Now, Moldova is, they're the poorest country in all of Europe. In the villages, if you ever watched the movie Fiddler on the Roof and you see the old houses, that's basically what the villages look like. And their average income is about $50 a month.
Really?
Yes. However, they do grow their own food and so forth, and they kind of barter and sell between each other. In the cities, their average income is about $300 a month. And it's really, really, they're poor. So when we bring over their food, or not, I'm sorry, when we bring over the things that they want to give away, I've watched these people, one time I gave a pair of boots to this one missionary family. They took those boots and they handed it to another girl who was poorer than they are. I've watched these families who are poor because there are people with less take money out of their pocket and help them with groceries.
Isn't that something?
It's totally amazing, and it makes your heart melt.
Yes.
So we, and being here in the United States, and I was attending a church that was very affluent, but we'd spend thousands of dollars on banners and things. So I decided I'm going to take some of that money and send it over there. So that's what I do. And now I attend a different church where we give more because they're more struggling. But to watch people give to people and help people who are less fortunate, I mean, it was just, it's perfect having you here because, my last several guests have all been about helping people who don't have, or people on the street. I mean, we've had CAM here, we've had Church Under the Bridge here, we've had all, in the last several productions we've done. So here it's really neat because it's not just coming out of your pocket, you're actually out there helping people. Yeah. And it's more than pulling your wallet out.
No, when you give of yourself and you see what it is that those efforts are doing for someone, it just makes a big difference. And that's the other great, wonderful thing about my position in broadcasting. I've always had an audience, and I've always been able to connect the haves with the have-nots, but also report back to the haves. I'll give you an example. You mentioned the Sonny Melendrez Community Center, which is on the poorest side of town, over on the west side. That community center serves a few hundred families that truly are the poorest in our city. But at the same time, they are all, many among themselves, very generous, like you mentioned. But they also have all these different needs. So over the course of the last 20 years, we've brought bicycles and toys at Christmas time. We brought turkeys and hams at Thanksgiving and Christmas. We've one year, if you can believe this, Alan, it started by osmosis. I was on the air, and I got a call from a salon here in San Antonio, and they said, school is starting real soon. We'd like to offer free haircuts to the kids at the center. And we'll go down there and we'll bring our chairs and cut their hair. Well, I immediately jumped on it. I said, boy, that would be incredible. Another salon called. And by the time it was all over, we had 27 salons that all brought their chairs, and we turned the gym into this giant salon. And these kids who had never gotten a professional haircut in their life were now getting these unbelievable haircuts, and their transformation from getting the haircut to when they walked out of the building was just phenomenal. And again, it goes back to that being able to show those people what it is they can do and giving them that opportunity. So it makes a big difference.
There's one of our sponsors, his name is Ed Guerrero. He has I don't know if you've ever seen the signs around town, they say, go see Ed. They're around, and he's a CPA here in town. He always talks about how he was brought up on the west side of town. He was poorer than dirt, and so forth. And he's one of our sponsors now. He and his wife. His wife is an attorney, and you know what's so amazing? They will buy shirts that have their business stuff on it, and a lot of companies will sell them to their employees, sell them to the people. They give them away. And they're very generous. They help people, and I just think that's really cool. And I think when you know where you've come from, I mean, I grew up poor. I grew up, my mom made $1.25 an hour when my dad left, working at Woolco Woolworths or something like that, Monkey Wards, I think they called it. And she had 5 kids to raise. So I didn't even know we were poor. It was
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
My parents were the same way. You know, my brother and I were talking about it. My brother lives in El Paso, and my dad would go on Christmas Eve to get a tree because they were giving them away just about. And he'd get a tree for like 75 cents for Christmas. And he would go to either Kentucky Fried Chicken or Church's Chicken at the closing time, and they would give him a big bag of chicken for $0.25. And that's how he got by and fed his family. I can never remember ever missing a meal or ever going hungry. It was just phenomenal. And then again, the fact that we were able to go to Catholic school was really the biggest gift of all.
Yeah. Now, I understand you also have a radio show in Bernie?
I do. In fact, our mutual friend, Baron Wiley, who used to be, of course, the sales manager here at KLUP. Baron, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but when I was at Magic 105, he was my assistant.
Really?
And so when I came to KLUP, in fact, in this very studio is where I did my show for 3 years, morning show. He came over with me and then got into sales. And now he's the general manager of his own radio station, which is KBRN, but it's BernieRadio.com. And we're over there having just the time of our lives. And if you can believe this is an incredible format. Because, you know, he and I talked about it. He says, well, what's the format going to be? He says, we can be whatever we want to be. And one of the things that I've always done, in fact, I started it here at KLUP, was to literally connect all these different generations, 5 generations of music lovers, and introduce to younger generations the music of the past, and to older generations the music of the present. And it was all an incredible, wonderful, happy party, and that's what's happening over at Bernie Radio. So we're having a great time.
It was funny. I was talking to Baron just a few weeks ago, and about the radio station and the music, and so he mentioned, well, it's not all Christian music, but you know, some of the rock and roll. And I told him, hey, I listen to the Beatles constantly.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
greatest band of all time, and the greatest rock and roll band of all time is the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, so it's really fun. It's really interesting. Anyway, I want to mention some of the accolades that I'm sure you've I don't know how it affects you, but when I read through this, I think I was more put back than anything. But I want to read this to our audience because it's something to be out there and you help people and you kind of sit back, or you help for your own ulterior motives. But in reading all of these things, I realized that you do this because you're giving, not because you're waiting for somebody to give back to you. And I think that's really, really important. I think it's a biblical teaching that is supreme, because I think a lot of people do a lot of things for their ulterior motives. And in reading all through these accolades, I realized more and more that these are not accolades that you received $1 million each for. These are just awards that because you've put yourself out there to help the community. And so let me go through this. So twice you've been named Billboard Magazine's National Radio Personality of the Year. Now, I'm familiar with Billboard, especially because of Casey Kasem.
Right.
So were you friends with him?
I was. And I'll tell you, this is another wonderful, serendipity. When I made it to Los Angeles, there were two people I wanted to meet. One of them was Casey Kasem, the other was Dick Clark. And so when I asked around the radio station if anybody knew Casey, they said, no, but if you call over there, you're not going to get to talk to him. He's got so many people working for him. There's no way. Well, I did. I ended up getting a call back from him. We got to be good friends, and he had that incredible voice. Hi, Sonny, this is Casey Kasem.
Yeah.
You know, and then one day, after I guess a few months, he called me and asked. He said he was going on vacation and wanted to know if I would sit in for him on American Top 40.
Really?
And so I, of course, jumped at the chance and ended up doing that show. In fact, the show, if you go to SoundCloud, you can listen to a clip of the show. But here's the thing that is, to me, the most incredible thing. When I was on the radio in El Paso, I was a program director. We would play American Top 40. And the same thing at KTSA when I came to be program director here in San Antonio. This was in the 60s and 70s. And I would play the show on the air, and I would think to myself, Casey Kasem has got the greatest job in the world. He plays the greatest music in the world. He tells these stories. He's on 500 radio stations around the world. What must it be like to be behind that incredible microphone? And I believe that in essence, by dreaming that and by envisioning that, I was telling God, I would love to do this. And so that opportunity presented itself, and I believe it's not by accident that my prayers were answered. And so there I was. But it was just an incredible, surreal experience.
Wow. I also have here that you were presented the National Hispanic Radio Personality of the Year. In 2003, you were inducted into the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. I have also that you were included in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as one of the top 100 radio personalities of all time. Wow. I mean, Inc. magazine named you as a socially responsible entrepreneur of the year. You were awarded the 2000 Marketing Philanthropist Lifetime Achievement Award. In LA, you were chair of the United Nations Year of the Child. We're going to stop here for a second.
Yes.
Okay. I had to read about this, and I guess it was a takeoff from We Are the World, and this is for the children now.
Well, this was actually the UN. The UN designated 1979 as the Year of the Child, and they prepared 5 years before, leading up to it, because they wanted that year to be a year of inspiration for individuals and for organizations around the world to promote projects that benefited children, especially children from who were disadvantaged, poor, in need of so many different things. You know what that is? That's my phone. My phone talking. And so what happened was I became the chairman for Los Angeles, and we were asked to come to Washington to present ideas that would benefit children. And I suggested that there be a national holiday for children, and but not your traditional type of holiday where there are gifts involved, parties, etc., but rather a day when parents and those who were aunts, uncles, anyone having a child in their life would spend time with that child doing everything under the sun, literally outdoors under the sun. It was called Sunshine Day. And it was adopted, and in 1979, on August the 19th, literally every state in the country had a Sunshine Day celebration, including, of course, Los Angeles.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, also, let me go on. President Ronald Reagan commended you for your efforts on war on drugs. I guess that was Nancy Reagan's big thing.
That's right.
Don't say no.
That's
no.
right.
Then you also received the National Directors Community Leadership Award by the FBI. Department of Justice recognized you with the prestigious Modern Hero Award for your efforts to inspire the nation's youth to soar. I'm sorry. In San Antonio, you were named a community leader, or you had a community center. We talked about that in the west side of town. And you were, you also, I guess, did you receive like a Grammy nomination for the music in children's? Okay.
Well, what happened was I woke up. I was on the radio in Los Angeles at an afternoon show on Magic 106 in L.A. And it was like 7:30 in the morning, and I hear a child singing "We Are the World." We are the world. We are the children. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, a children's version of "We Are the World." Why didn't I think of that? That's an incredible, natural thing to happen after the big anthem with all the different stars. But then as I woke up completely, Alan, I realized that it was not a child. It was actually Michael Jackson, and he was singing in the original version. So that afternoon, I shared with my listeners, what happened, and I said, I was wondering if there are any children or parents who would want to be involved in a children's version of "We Are the World." Well, again, through osmosis, one after another, and we ended up auditioning over 1,500 children to sing, and then we had to go out and get a producer to produce the record. We got George Duke. He was an award-winning, Grammy award-winning producer. We got musicians like Philip Bailey, Stephen Clark from Journey. It was amazing. Everybody came, and then there was all these child stars that wanted to be in it, including Drew Barrymore and several other who were on national shows. And we auditioned them as well. So we ended up with 50 children. You can imagine in Los Angeles, 14, 15 million people. And here we have an incredible talent. And they all then went into a studio and we recorded the children's version of "We Are the World," and all to benefit USA for Africa from the sale of the records. But then by the time I left LA and came to San Antonio, I found out that my agent told me that the song had been nominated for the children's version for Best Children's Recording in 1985 actually.
So you have a lifetime of impressive moments that have really affected a lot of people. I mean, obviously thousands, if not millions of people.
Alan, it's a lifetime of gifts of this. This is what I believe what God wants me to do. Every morning when I'm ready to go to start my day, I'm basically saying, here I am reporting for duty. Who are you going to put in my path today, and what it is you want me to do to inspire people? And I, like I say, I'm thrilled to be able to do that.
So in talking about using our talents to benefit others, I want to read a couple scriptures that I want to start with, and actually kind of I want it to be a foundation for everything we talk about. And it's in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. And what it says is this: "Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." And I think I want to use that as a basis because in the scripture, it talks a lot about helping others who are less fortunate. And this is your passion, helping others who are not as fortunate, who are less fortunate. And I think that when I read in the Old Testament, especially about how God tells his people to take care of the widow and the orphan and the foreigner, take care of people who are less fortunate, make sure that your crops are not shaken down to the bare bones so that people starve, that you're actually helping them. And in the New Testament, we see Jesus feeding the poor. We see him reaching out and healing the poor. And so all through Scripture, you have that which God commands us, basically, You know, especially by the mere fact he says, be imitators of him. If he's reaching out and helping the poor and reaching out and helping those that are less fortunate, then we need to be imitators of him and do that very exact same thing.
I agree. I agree. You know, we are giving these gifts, and some of us are given gifts that we're fortunate enough to recognize early on. Others have to find those gifts as time goes on. But once you do, and once you know, you can use that gift. And you know, it's not about your position. It's not about what you have or don't have. It's about your heart. I remember one time here in San Antonio, it rained so hard that there were several people who lost their homes. There was flooding, all kinds of things going on. And we decided to have a big drive to have listeners give donations of literally everything that people needed, including goods, different kinds of clothing, etc. And there's a big mall here. There was a mall called Central Park Mall, and there's this big sign above it here in San Antonio, right in the middle of the north side. And so I broadcasted there from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. We were there for the whole day, and we had told people that we wanted them to come and bring their donations. And we had a truck. HEB is the big supermarket here in San Antonio and South Texas, and so they brought one of their trucks, and our goal was to fill that semi to raise $5,000 and to get at least 25 pints of blood to be able to give to this drive. Well, by the time it was over, we had filled, Alan, 19 semis. They kept bringing more and more semis because people did not stop. We had 2 sets of cars the whole time. We raised $50,000 and donations of 125 pints of blood. But here's the amazing part. In the middle of the day, I'll never forget this, and it speaks volumes about San Antonio and what a generous community we have here. In the middle of the day, and there was always a steady stream of 2 cars coming through, there was a lady who had come from the Dominion, which is one of the higher end, if not the highest end of the city here in San Antonio, and she had some linens in the back seat that her servants had wrapped up, and she just sit there. She says, "In the back," And so thank you so much for your donation. We're opening her door. Next to her is an old beat-up station wagon with 6 hands on each side, 3 hands on each side, holding this old beat-up mattress. And this family were making this donation. To me, at that moment, that was what this city is all about, in that no matter where you are on the scale of success or whatever it is you want to call it, you always are in a position to give. And after it was all over, I was getting ready to get in my car, and from way afar in the parking lot, I heard my name called, and I looked over, and it was this young lady, and she came, and she's running, and she says, "I'm so sorry. I had to take 3 buses to get here." And she hands me this little bag from Walgreens, and inside it is a toothbrush and a little tube of toothpaste, and that was her donation. She had come from the other side of town and gotten on all these buses just to bring that little donation. And that donation meant as much as anything else that we got that day.
And it's the same thing I said earlier about going to Moldova, the poorest area
yes,
in Europe, and here are poor people giving to poor people.
Right, exactly.
It just melts your heart.
Right, because that's who we are. That's the way we're born, and that's who we are as human beings. It's not just as San Antonians or Americans. It's the world over. That's who the human spirit is, and that's the power of God. That's enthusiasm, the spirit within.
It's interesting, real quick little story. When I was in Moldova for the first time, and I stayed with this couple, and I didn't know them real well at this point, but I was there by myself. Susan wasn't with me at this time. And I noticed they had a washing machine, a little bitty washing machine. Their kitchen was as big as a bathroom. I mean, it was just tiny. But they didn't have a dryer. So I looked out on their patio, and it was cold out there. It was, December, so it's got to be in the mid-30s. And they had baskets of clothing out there. And so I looked over, and I'm thinking, well, how do you dry these clothes? And they says, well, we can't. I says, because we don't have a dryer, number one, and it's damp outside. So what happens is they stay out there, and they have to rewash them so they don't have mildew. So all through the winter time, they're rewashing their clothes without drying them because they can't dry them because it's not warm enough for them to hang out to dry. So I said, well, this isn't going to happen. So we walked across the street, bought a dryer, and brought it over. They still use that same dryer today.
Wow, that's wonderful.
That's over 10 years old. Today, it's 3 years old. We've got to buy a new one. It's just we have a different mindset here.
Still, exactly.
So anyway, so I know that your heart is for children. And I remember when I first started going to church, listening to people in the church talk about children or our youth are our future. And I never understood it as a kid. I just said, okay. But there's a passage in Psalms 127. It says this: children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward which are an offspring, a reward from him. The second verse here, in verse 4, says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. And I'm thinking, a lot of times we think that as children are a blessing of God to me as a father or mother or in our family. But the way I'm looking at this now is children are a blessing and a gift of God to you as a nation, And what I've seen in all these things that you have done, I mean, I'm looking at, Fred, the cockatoo in Beretta. I watch Beretta all the time. And Sonny Melendrez was the voice of Fred. I told it to my wife this morning. I said, did you ever watch Beretta? She goes, yeah. Sonny Melendrez was the cockatoo. It's like, wow. So, I mean, all these little things I'm reading, you touch parquet margarine. I mean, parquet, I remember that little stuff. Butter, yeah. And I'm thinking, you touch lives beyond your comprehension.
Well, again, I feel very fortunate, and that's, to me, the greatest prayer you can say is thank you, because everything starts with gratitude. When you have a grateful heart, and you are grateful for everything, and I'm glad you mentioned children, because it's not just about the children who are in our lives; it is about the child who is inside us. Mm-hmm. And when you realize that you are a child of God forever, you have a way to see the world through the eyes of that child that you once were. Because you never really stop being a child. You may decide that you don't want to look at the life that way, but when you see it through the eyes of a child, it's amazing how much gratitude you have for everything that you do and everything that you're able to do in your adult life.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading, and I really didn't know how the show was going to take. I never really do how it's going to go, what direction. And I started reading about statistics, and I really don't want to belabor this, but I started realizing that, and I'm just going to throw it out for a minute here, 35% of children under 18 live in a single-parent home in the United States. 35%. It says as many as 25% of the children in the U.S. live in households with only a mother. That's the highest in the entire world. You go to other countries like the UK, it's 21%, not much difference. Russia 18, Denmark 17, France 16, Germany 12, Brazil 10, Ukraine 9%. But the United States, we have over 35%. That's amazing. That's just astronomical.
That's a tragedy, yes.
It really is. So when we invest our lives into other people, into children, we're investing in our future. And I think that's something that I see that you have done. And I just totally am honored that you're here as somebody who has literally spent his entire life investing in people to make our nation a better nation.
Well, you're very kind to say that, and I could say the same thing about you. You have done so much to go to other parts of the world, and again, everyone does what they can, and everyone has the ability to do something, and that's the key: is to do something. One of my favorite quotations outside of the Bible was said by a philosopher who lived in the first century. His name was Philo of Alexandria. And he said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle." And that's really what it amounts to, is that we need only to be kind to each other in order to give ourselves that gift of gratitude through our gratitude and our generosity to others.
Yeah. Yeah. In here you are, even in the Old Testament, back in Deuteronomy, we've been reading from the Old Testament actually, but in Deuteronomy it says something here to the people. It says, at the end of 3 years. Now, in Israel, they had several different tithes. They had one every year of crops. They had one every 3 years. They had one, and so forth. But every 3 years, they had a tithe that what it was. It says, bring the tithes, the year's produce, to the store in your towns, storehouses, so that the Levites, which were the priests, they didn't have a job. So the tithing from the people supported them. They weren't allowed. Well, their job was basically to, be the ministers. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was to help them. It was to help the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows who live in the towns, that they may come and eat and be satisfied. And so the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. So I'm looking at the United States, and I'm seeing that through the time, what is sad. I see that, we as a people of God are basically given the heritage, the right, the commandment, all that is to help one another, to give to those who need to be given to. And as I'm reading this, I guess there's another passage in Deuteronomy. It says that, when you clear your land, don't go back and do it again. When you shake your olive trees, don't go back and shake it. Leave it for the people who need it after you. And like sometimes we get so stingy that we want to make sure every single penny, is in our pocket, and we don't leave that extra for others. And I believe that we almost have taken that away from that godly giving of us to be blessed by Him, to give to the government, to give programs to do it for us, which I think is a shame, because we're losing that very honoring of God and that blessing that God will give us by doing it out of our own personal life.
I saw a quote recently. It was said by Dale Carnegie, who of course wrote the famous book How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, "Success is what you get. Success is when you get what you want. Happiness is when you want what you get." And how true it is. We go chasing success, and we go chasing all these things that society says that we need to have in order to be successful or make it, and yet at the same time we sometimes overlook the simple blessings and these amazing, wonderful miracles happening in our lives every single day, especially with children.
Yeah, and I think that, well, and even beyond that, because I know we've talked about children, even in our elderly. We nowadays, and in our country is one of the worst again, we tend to take our parents and we put them in homes and we kind of leave them there and forget about them. We have the lowest amount of extended family living together than anyone else in the world. There are so many other countries where you have extended family together. They're helping. It's part of their culture. Now, we believe that. My wife's parents came to live with us. Her mother died pretty quick after they moved in, but her dad stayed with us for another 7-8 years. My mom is with me now. So basically, we believe that the commandment that says honor your father and mother is the same as when the Jews of old, what it all meant was to take care of your parents when they're old. And so we believe that. And I think that comes with that, God blesses. And I think that we turn away from the blessing when we turn away from those very God-given gifts to us to give to others. I heard a long time ago that happiness comes from our seeking to give to others, our investment in other people.
I agree. We tend to we lead by example, and that's really the greatest gift we can give anyone, especially our children, is to be able to have them see what it is you would like them to be. You really have that obligation almost to give them that wonderful gift of yourself in that example.
Yeah. And there's one more scripture I want to read. It's in 1 John 3:16. And I want to remind my audience here, it's not John 3:16, it's 1 John 3:16. And it says this, "We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren." And what that means is that we are to give of ourselves. It's not that we go out and die for somebody. It's that I take my time, I take my energies, I take the things that I have, I lay it down for you, to give to you, to help you, to be part of your life, to help you. I'm laying down my life for you. And I think that's something that we as believers, a lot of us have forgotten.
Well, again, it's like I'm a motivational speaker. I can't really motivate you, but I can hopefully inspire you to motivate yourself. And motivation and inspiration is something that you have to do constantly. It's not just something that you get once in a while and that's it. And so it's the same thing with what it is you need to be reminded of in what you're talking about. And when you get that reminder on a constant level and on a constant basis, because you have all these different ways now. I mean, look at the world we live in. I mean, literally everything is right here. This is a radio station. It is a television station. It is a newspaper. It talks to you. There's a lady in here. My watch is talking to me. I mean, it is incredible. So we have these wonderful tools at our disposal to literally connect with each other one-to-one, and sometimes in a grand way, like you're doing with your show right now.
Yeah, thank you. I was on Facebook this morning, and when I was putting on the event and all that, and I was forwarding it or sharing it, is what it is, on Facebook. And so I came across, I don't know if you know who Ray Jones is. He was the worship leader at CBC for many years. And his on the newsfeed came up. And I want to read this. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
It says, you'll like this as a motivational speaker. "We are not victims of our circumstances unless we allow them to rule over us. Jesus is bigger than anything we face, for he is Lord."
Well said. Well said.
It is. And I think if we can grasp that in our personal lives, I think our behavior in our public life, will be infectious to raise that level of joy, of happiness, of giving.
Sure.
And through all that comes that blessing.
And don't you also feel like when we give, we literally are elevated to another level, and it is an incredible, wonderful way for us to be able to connect with each other as human beings. A little lady once told me I was helping her find her dentist, and we were walking across the street, and there was construction going on. This is back in LA, and she's holding my hand. She was like in her 80s, and she says, we're all here to help each other, aren't we? And to me, that's the secret of life. That's why we're here. We're all here to help each other.
And I think that, and I like the thing about, we're given talents, and all of us don't have the same talents. If we did, it'd be just nobody's really doing anything for anybody. We all have different talents, and they all affect us different ways. And I think it's important that every one of us realizes this, because as my talent may not be as grand as somebody else's, it still helps and it touches lives on other levels. And every person in the world can do this. Everybody, because we all have a talent somewhere of some type of thing that can give that joy, give that uplift to somebody, to let them feel like they're worthy, or life is worth living.
Amen. Amen.
So, it's been really a joy and an honor to have you on this show.
Same here, Alan.
So anyway, thank you for joining me today, and Sonny. And this has been an incredible show. I want to encourage you to go back to my website, thebelieversjourney.net, and you'll see other things about us. If I really like your book here, I'll put it on my website. And
well, I hope you like it. And let me also say thank you to you for everything, from first of all, for the invitation to be here. The honor, believe me, is mine. But also to congratulate you on taking really a major step. And I know that, Facebook was not even on your radar when you first started doing this, but now you've got an incredible following. You've got people who are being inspired around the world. I congratulate you on using your gifts to literally make the world a better place.
Well, thank you. Obviously, it's all God, because I don't have much.
I agree.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and everybody have a wonderful, wonderful week, and aloha.
Alan Cutting and the Believer's Journey radio program seeks to teach the Word of God in a clear and practical manner. For more information, please visit the podcast page at am630theword.com.